Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So what do you think this is? I think you probably imagine that it's probably a flower of some sort. And you would be correct. And it's one of my favorite magical flowers that I love of spring. And if you haven't guessed it by now, I'm going to scroll in so you can see. Yes, it's the pansy. Let's paint a really big pansy today. It's great for wet on wet. It's great for playing with scraping the paint, and so you get some nice veins. Great for layering, all that good stuff. If you never, painted a big flower, now's your chance. I give you a reference material for this, so no need to fret. I don't show you how to draw it because you have the reference for material and you can just draw the pansy from there. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. This is a lot of fun. Trust me, you'll love it. Also, check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials, and a live stream in the top tier, as well as a new Facebook group I just added where weekly challenges and monthly giveaways. You can check it out right here with a little round icon on top of my tippy finger there and click on that little round icon and then you'll pop up to my Patreon page. It's just a place people go and support my channel, which I appreciate so much. So let's paint one of my favorite spring flowers, the pansy. This could be any color you want. Any kind of funky colors. It can be pink, yellow, whatever. But I'm doing purple today. So let's get going and painting this. All right, I'm going to go over my supplies. I have a block that's by Baohong. It's a 9x12, cotton, 100% cotton, acid-free, cold press. It's a great, they make great paper, actually. Very professional grade artist paper. You can get them on Amazon, and I think Dick Blick has them, and definitely Jerry's Autorama has it. I attached a reference photo for you, but you can see tons of pansies all over the internet. There's different types of pansies. They're different colors, whatever. I just want to show you like a kind of fun, simple technique to use to make to make the pansies look more realistic and easy to do. And it's a very wet on wet kind of scenario here. I'll be using my Princeton 12 Neptune series, my Princeton 8 Long Round Velvet Touch series. If I grab another brush, which I might, will always tell you, and I'll always put it in the description box. So I've already sketched out my little pansy here. If you can see it, lightly sketched. Like I said, you just grab the image that I have given you, but you can grab another image of a pansy, follow along. And just use this technique on any color. It doesn't have to be this. I'm doing purple, but you can do pink, you can do yellows, there's different color with pansies, oranges. And just to think about taking maybe one flower and doing a big painting of one flower, it's also a lot easier. So I'm just gonna mix up some colors here, some purple tones. I'll be using my ultramarine deep blue, makes a really pretty purple, and my bright rose. So bright rose. It's always good to mix up a lot of paint because this paper is cotton and it's cold press and it's going to soak up a lot of that paint. So I'm getting this pretty wet, like tea almost. I'm grabbing that ultramarine blue and look at that nice purple. And you can make it bluer if you wanted to, or pinker, whatever works for you. Mine's a little bit bluer. See, I'm going to grab some more blue. Always have more paint than you think you need when it comes to this kind of color. Paper, cold press. So I'm going to water it down a little bit more here, and it'll be lighter. So I'm going to work in sections. I have a section up here, section here that I drew, and section in here. I'm leaving a little section here. There's yellow is going to be here, and it's going to be darker. Purple's kind of coming in here, maybe a little white. So I'll start with this outer section here. I'll just grab a little more water. It's because it's really too light. And you can start wet on dry. And this paper, like I said, is just going to soak it up. So I'm going right here. I've got that nice light purple. I grab some more water. I'm just filling that section in. There's some eraser stuck there. And it's really wet, as you can see, right? Very, very wet. And don't pay attention to these little erasers that stuck here. I didn't blow them off my paper. Oh well, it happens. And there's that nice pretty light color. You can start to play around with bleeding in some darker tones while it's wet. So I have this darker tone here, right? You can start to play with it, bleeding it from here and a little bit from here. Kind of swooping your brush like this. See? And there's a little bit darker tones here. You can also use the back of your paintbrush. It's got a nice little point. And this is what I was talking about, little trick. It's going to fold back into the paint you scraped. Like, here we go. Just do some lines. You see that? You can barely see the lines, but they're kind of folding back in. So if you want to add some deeper color, getting a little bit darker in my paint color choice. I feel it's a little too light. I want to go a little bit deeper. I'm adding some more tones. Just a little bit darker, a little bit thicker with the paint, more like a coffee milk. See, a little bit thicker here. It's kind of bleeding that color in. And you can manipulate it a little bit. You clean up your brush, and kind of mush the paint around. See, I'm kind of pushing it lightly, swooping. I want to move this paint around a little bit. I feel like it was sitting there. I'm just going to push it around, give it a little push, give it a little shove. All right. You can see kind of like all this beautiful tones kind of happening. So again, go back and like you can scrape with the end of your brush and you'll see these little fine lines. And it should fold back into the lines. You can always paint them too. It's just one little technique that I find really cool. I don't know if you could see that really closely. See those little lines all created? All from just scraping with your brush. Now it's still damp. We can get a little darker. I'm going to get my other brush, my number 8. Get the paint a little thicker, minimal water. So here's the ultramarine blue. Grab a little of that pink. See, it's really thick. It's called the butter. You can see like butter. It's, oh, sorry. You can see that. Butter. I barely used any water, just kind of enough to move it and manipulate it. I might grab a little bit more because it's super thick. It's not going to bleed as much. I could also use Prussian blue. Let's just tap in here. And look at that. I don't want to tap too much. I want, you know, it to bleed a little bit, not a lot. And you can do a little more down here. And just tippy tapping my brush. I barely touch the paper with some of that paint. It's a little bit darker. See how that just goes out that way? Slowly bleeds. It has a less of an intense bleed when the paint is thicker. See, and then just do tippy taps on the edge here. I am going to grab, it's still very damp, but I want this darkness over here. If you see the photograph, you'll know what I'm talking about. Gonna bleed. Just taking my brush, kind of moving it like this. Gently. I'm barely touching the paper. I think I've showed this in my workshop. I barely touch the paper. I just kind of like tap it on top. Really light dance of touching the paper. You don't want to like press down hard. I'm just barely touching it. There we go. Now you could start to see those little vines that I scraped even more. And you can manipulate this even more. I can just kind of lift it and move it around. And if you want to get this even darker, I would take some Prussian blue, which is a really deep blue, and add that pink, and you get a really deep, dark purple. If you want to go really deep. I'm going to add a little water. Ooh, it's almost like black. So you get that really deep, deep color. Isn't that pretty? And it really doesn't take much effort. And this is the kind of same technique you're going to be doing in this section, this section, this section. And out here you have to leave a little bit the space for the yellow. But it's just this simple movement. I'm barely touching my paper. At the beginning it has to be wetter to move the paint around. And as it's wet, already damp, you can play around with adding a little more color. Now you can see those veins that we did before. Can add a few more scraping here. Just with your brush. Now you can see how pretty those veins are. Right? I would move on to this side here because it's not touching this one. You want to kind of keep it separate. Although in the photograph you show a little white edge, so you could kind of theoretically start to play with this one. If it's better for you to have more control on the number 8, do that. But the problem with this one is, which I will talk about, you don't have much surface area to fill the paint in with this. It's very small, right? You have a ton with this floppy brush. That's the difference. You can put more wet, watered paint in here than you can with this guy. You see? So that's the goal. I'm going to water down my purple again and do this like so. It can be a little lighter if you want to, or a little darker, or a different color all together. Just going to put it in here. Fill my space that I drew. It will slowly come alive, just like we did on that side. Remember this particular pad, block, this cold press really soaks the paint in. So you really need a good amount of watered paint in here. See, again, there's a nice little wing side. And then you can start add the deeper color. A little more here, because it's kind of folding. I kind of manipulated, just kind of pushing the paint a little bit. And you can add some to the edge. Now, you don't have to be perfect like the photograph. I tell people all the time, get a little creative, add some other color. You can add some different pigments, maybe a little pinker on the side. I'm going to add a little pink. So I'm going to water down my rose that I have to make a little pinky purple, just to change it up a little bit. Look, I add a little pink. See? I just want to change it a little bit. Make it different. Just to change the pigment. See that? And again, you can take the tip, the back of the brush into those little scrape lines, little veins. You'll see it fold back into it. It's a little trick. We can paint them in also if you forget to do this when it's wet. So this one is a little more pink, right? You could add a little pink if it's still damp. A little pink in here. A little pink so it kind of coordinates a little more. And again, I'm going to go back to my number 8, right? The thicker paint. Just going to tap here. And then you can kind of move it out. It's going to bleed a little bit, and then we'll move it out a little bit later. And I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to push the paint a little bit. Give it a little shove. And then a little bit under here. Not too much, just a teeny bit. See? Now it looks like it has a fold there. This is all the little things. You just take your time. I'm going to do that to each little section. I'm going to be doing this one and the back one. So the back one, I would leave a little white space between the two. We could actually go work on that now. That's what I mean by that. I'll just show you. So I'm going to grab my paint color again. Going to work pretty fast. Just going to fill in my little section I drew with my paint color. Again, it's wet on dry. And I'm just almost hitting that edge, but I'm not gonna. I'm leaving that white and just filling in my pretty little petal and this nice pale kind of purple color. Now it's nice and damp, and we can do the same techniques we just did. If you look at the picture, start to fold in some of that more maybe pinky purple. A little bit less on this one, like this one has more intensity. Just tapping in a little color here, a little color here. You can start to play with this a little bit. Maybe add a little more purple, pinky purple kind of colors. So I'll make this one a little pinker. But again, I'm going to still do the scraping kind of technique. This outer petal out here, this section is a little bit lighter, so I'm going to lift. That's like grabbing the paint and tapping it back on the paper towel. It's a little bit lighter. And then this section will be darker. And of course you can go back and scrape with the edge, the back of your paintbrush. It's not really folding in too much, so we can go back in and just, we'll paint them in also. And I'm gonna go add some deeper color here where that fold would be. A few more here. See how it's folding like that? I have that little edge. You can kind of connect it in some parts, but not too much. There. Doesn't look like it's floating. Just don't want it to bleed into the other one. Look at that. So much fun. And then of course we gotta do the bottom, and then we're gonna add the yellow little center. I mean, I think you can spend days upon days creating this wonderful pansy. I'm grabbing more watercolor here. This one I'm gonna have a little white in here, but again, it's the same technique. Just gonna grab the paint. I'm gonna water it down now. So I'm just grab some water on my brush that had the paint on it and wiggle it in, fill all this color in. See that? Grab more of the beautiful purple, leaving a little white edge again. And going in here. Can leave a little white spots they had in this one. Or you can just fill it in. You don't have to just really make it so technical. I mean, I think, you know, people lose it when they look at photographs. They get too technical about how it looks. Really just, it's just there for you to get for reference, and then you can kind of go for it. Like I'm going here. I'm going to go here and then go for it. Right? You got the colors. Again, ultramarine blue. There's that bright rose, making the paint a little thicker. I just have to play with putting in some darker tones here. I'm kind of pushing my brush. There'll be darker tones here, but I'm leaving this part a little bit light. Maybe a little more pink in here. Don't be afraid to play. You don't have to follow, the, like I said, the photograph to a T. Gonna get a little bit darker over here. A few in here. Compared to the photograph, I want mine a little bit darker. And then I'll take the number 8 brush to kind of manipulate moving that paint around again. So, see? Just take it and move it. These little lines back this way. Same thing on this side. Manipulating it a little bit. You can use the scraper on this one too. See? It helps too. It's a kind of like a guide also. If you forgot to do that, don't worry about it. We're going to paint it in anyway. Look how pretty that looks. And remember, you can take super dark color, less water, and start to do the bleed that I love so much. It's like my favorite part. Can't help it. And it bleeds out here. And a little bit bigger here. Let me grab some more pinky color so it doesn't look so blue. And it was looking pretty blue. See? You can take the scrape and go like this. Scrape it out. And it will kind of hit those lines as well. So much fun. I cannot tell you. See, here it's a little bit drier now. Do some lines going out this way. Again, getting a little bit darker here on the edge. So it's feeling wet. You know, you're gonna have to wait till this all dries, but add some more super details. But that's the gist of it, really, you know. I might add a little bit deeper color coming back here. See, now it's a little drier, and I can add some lines going this way. It just adds another dimension to it. So I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to come back. All right, once yours is dry, you can take the thick purplish paint here. That is like butter, and you can start to do those lines that you see. Mine's a little bit too thick. I can't move the paint. You just kind of go down here and add some of those dark lines. Mine's a little damp still, but you see what I'm saying. You go in and add these little lines, little veins that kind of come out. There's some over in here. Just kind of put those little lines. You don't want to go too crazy. There's only a few in certain areas. Just going to grab the few that I see. Can make them a little bit darker, kind of going in here. And you can go a little creative if you want more dark ones. I put a few back in here. And there's a little dark line kind of, I'm just doing like this, a little wiggle here. And then you see a vein kind of going up in here. This is where you paint in the veins if you didn't scrape. And you can kind of go over those veins that you scraped that you can't really see that you want to see. So I might take some of that pinkish purple and do some lines that I see here, but I want them more visible. You see that? Little pretty, just some little veins. You don't have to go crazy showing every single one of them. I just like to do a few of them. You see them. You can make it a little bit thicker too. Now you're getting the details in, right? So here's some lines down here with the little veins. Don't go too crazy. It can happen. It happens to everybody. Now you can decide if you actually want to do leaves or not. I'm going to put the little yellow in a second. I'm just going to finish my little details here with my little veins. Get down in here. I left a little white, right? Remember that little white section? And put the little vein close here. Okay. For the yellow center, is a little yellow, little green kind of blending. So I'm just going to use my cadmium yellow deep. Right? I'm just going to fill this sucker in here. Pretty like right out of the tube. Let me zoom in so you can see better. I'm just going to fill that in here. There's a little like yellow with some green in here. You don't have to get super technical. Just put the nice pretty yellow little dashes like this. And I'm going to grab a little burnt umber, a little peacock blue right here. I'm going to put a little green in here, kind of blending around this little area. You see that? And then I'll grab the yellow again, maybe water down and put it on top over here. See? There's a little white kind of little, I wouldn't call it like a little, almost like a little ear, kind of here and here. I'm tapping a little purple back in here. You can take the purple and tap it in here for like a nice little shadow also. And I'll wait till this dries and I can put a couple of little dark black veins in there. Just like this. You take the little black and go, I mean, excuse me, not black, purple. Don't get too technical on that. You don't have to go crazy on this. Just a little yellow area. Boop. Then you can put a green stem or not stem or leaves. Make it simple. Don't make your life crazy. I'm just going to grab some cadmium yellow deep. I've got peacock blue here. Whatever you've got. Prussian blue and yellow works perfectly fine. I'm going to grab some of that too. Makes like a deeper green. Playing with both of them. I got the two colors. Again, just put like a little stem, just something simple. I like to have it curved. And you can put a leaf too if you want. And I just think like a wiggle, nothing too, that's a little too small wiggle, would be bigger. Nothing too extravagant. You can do the scraping movement too with this leaf. I'm gonna fill it in. I'm grabbing some water. You see this paper just really soaks up the paint, so you really got to have a lot of water in it. See, just a little couple of wiggles. You don't have to go too crazy with this leaf. And add some variety of the color in there. Get some Prussian blue, maybe some burnt umber, so the green is not so perfectly pretty dark green. I'm just going to bleed the green in here in the dark. Put some in on the edge here. Do it on top where the stem is. Again, we can kind of do the same technique with kind of pushing out the color. See, because you have these little spider veins kind of like happening here. You just push it around. Show them who's boss. Move the paint around. Kind of moving this paint around. Again, you can take your brush, scrape the veins on the back of the brush. Instant veins. I know, right? It makes life easier. I would bleed like a little different variety of tones too, like maybe some brown with some blues, different kind of greens, just so it's not like, see, I'm going to tappy tap some color in here, so it's just that there's one note of green. Move it around. Gets a little kind of monotonous if it's just one color. Not very natural. And I'll get a little bit darker with my green. I'll add some darker green, maybe mix with some burnt umber and Prussian blue to get this part here a little darker. Because remember, it's on top of it. It's creating a shadow. You don't have to go, like I said, crazy with the leaves. You can put 1 or 2, 3 or 4, whatever you want to put in. That's pretty much it. That's how I'm going to do the pansy, and that's all we need to do. You can make the colors darker, lighter. I might go back in and I might add some more tones here, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So I hope it was fun and exciting for you. I might add another leaf here. You always step back and sometimes you can see better. But like here, I'm going to go whoop, whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. See how small this brush is? You have to grab a lot of paint with a lot of water. You probably have a little more control on this brush than the bigger one, but it's more work, see, because it doesn't have much of a belly. That's why I'm saying the number 12 Neptune is great for getting all that color in at once. And there you go. So I hope this was enjoyable. I hope you had fun. And remember, take it one section at a time when you're doing something large like this. No need to rush. Put some music on. You know, hang out. Put some kind of show on that you want to hear. Again, simple veins. Play. I might make this go over here a little more. And then I'll go and bleed the dark colors again. All right. Maybe mine is a little too bumpy. I'll just make it more or less bumpy. There you go. Pansy! Yep. Pansy. One of my favorites. Bleeding in some dark color here. Not going to go crazy too much. Have fun, guys. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.